So a few weeks ago in the DPP chord, the topic of French offense got brought up by Blaha Blast. Apologies if I pronounce your name wrong. What is French offense, or how does French offense look like nowadays? To which there was a few replies. Ty Carter said Coon, Gar, Laddie, Sis. A few other people said like Tran, Coon, Ghost kind of deal. And to which there was a bit of a discussion. And then Ledon posted a few teams, the Frenchman himself, of what he thought special offense looks like. So, not special offense, French offense looked like, which basically looks like special offense. It's very specially orientated. So here's example one. You have a Heatran, Suicune, Metagross, Latias, Lucario, Rotom. Example two, Gyarados, Latias, Heatran, Gengar, Tyranitar, Metagross. Example three, this is a very old, not very old 6, but a very common, well-known 6, especially pre-Spore ban. It's not very common now. But Coon, Heatran, Breloom, Laddie, Jirachi, Gengar. This one, Coon, Tran, Laddie, Scizor, Gengar, Ape. And last one is Rotom, Coon, Tran, Gengar, Jirachi. So basically, my conclusion is just special offense, really, essentially, is what's being classified as French offense. But what I like about these teams is this is typically how I build a lot of offensive teams myself, is kind of, that Laddie, 2 steals, Coon, Ghost kind of deal. Just seems to be a very good template for special offense in general. So whether you want to call that French offense, whether you want to call that special offense, I don't think it really matters. Just interesting to see that perspective. So it got me looking through some replays of French players, and I thought this team here, we'll skip to the start. This is a battle of Emerald versus SFG. I'm not sure, I can't remember what this is for, but this kind of encapsulated to me what the examples that were shown here of what, kind of like a templated, or maybe not templated, but like a standard version of like French offense would look like to me, right? And also too, this is very similar in how I build these styles of teams. So I'm not going to go over the battle, but just to kind of give you some context, in the lead is a Specs Laddie, there's a special defensive Tran, there's a just standard defensive Coon, there's a Life Orb or Mix Gon, there's a Scarf Metagross, and then there's something in the back. I'm going to assume, at a guess, that it's going to be some kind of fighting resist. More specifically, and most likely, it is going to be a Ghost, Gengar, or Rotom. As one, those two Pokemon would fit nicely onto a team like this. But also, two, just going with that French style, you'll see that most of them have a Ghost. Like, I reckon all of them have a Ghost, actually. Yeah, they do. So yeah, a Ghost fits really nicely on this style of team. So I want to go into the builder now. And this is the team, or this is the information that I could gather from the battle. And this is something really good to do as a player, especially if you're someone who struggles to build teams. I know I certainly struggle to build teams, especially from scratch. Building teams from scratch it's quite a skill, and the ratio of hitting to missing is quite a lot. Like if I were to build 10 teams from scratch, only one might hit. Where when I say scratch, I'm trying to come up with a new idea or do things in a way that maybe haven't been done before. Whereas if I'm to take someone else's team or existing teams of my own and just put tweaks on them, I can get a ridiculous amount of good teams with very little effort. So one of the best bang for buck strategies if you want to build a lot of teams is, like I talked about this in my previous video of the basics of team building in DPP OU, is once you find a team style that you like, tweak it as many times as you want. And the same goes for if you're taking other people's teams. Take this 5 here, for example. You can build this 5 into a 6 in as many different ways as you want, and that's what we're going to be doing in this video. Is I'm going to show you just how many different teams you can make out of this. So if we assume here that the last is going to be a fighting resist, which I'm pretty sure it's going to be, okay? It doesn't have to be, but a fighting resist would suit best. I'm going to go here, and this is just my own personal viability ranking. I sometimes use this to help me with team building, as it just kind of, more so just a visual if I'm just trying to look at the tier as a whole. It sometimes just helps me to see every Pokemon all at once, rather than, for example, me going into the team builder and then kind of having to scroll through Pokemon, because, for example, Donphan's all the way down here, but it's a super relevant Pokemon, right? So it just kind of helps me to just see everything at once, all right? So if I'm looking at fighting, I'm just looking through this list for fighting types, okay? Not fighting types, fighting resists. So if I look here, right? Let's go back. So first fighting resist is Gyarados. Gyarados probably doesn't fit that well on this team, so I'm going to skip that. Same with Starmie, probably doesn't fit that well on this team, so I'm going to skip that as well. Then if we look here, Rotom. Rotom fits nicely, so I'm going to make a version with Rotom. You can see here, I've got a version with Specs Rotom, I've got a version with Scarf Rotom. All right, keep going along. Zapdos. Now I've created a version here with Zapdos. And so on and so forth. Dragonite. Celebi. Can't remember if I did one with Gliscor or not. But anyway, the point remains. Like you can see here, I've gone through and put all the fighting resists that I think would work well into that team. And now I've got a whole heap of teams here that I can start building from. And even I did one example where I put Starmie over Coon. Now I haven't finished building these teams yet, but now it's given me a lot of ideas to go off, right? So if we look here, I've made a version with Specs Rotom, okay? Again, I'm going to fill out this 6. Now, it might not be exactly the same. I might change up Flygon's moves. It might not be Life Orb anymore. I might change up Latias to a Scarf or change Metagross, but the point remains the same. Is I've got a whole heap of ideas to work off, and they're all going to be pretty good teams, or at least semi-decent teams. So I've got a version with CB Dragonite. I've got a version with Life Orb DD Dragonite. Version with Celebi, right? So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different variations of this team so far. And I actually have 3 more that I've already built that are actually in my good teams that I'll use for future tournaments. So out of this one team, I've created 13 different teams and 3 are good. Now I'm sure I'll probably get 1 or 2 more good ones out of these once I'm done. But the point remains of, like what I said in my last video, is you want to get a structure and tweak it as many times as you can. And that's how you're going to be able to build teams repeatedly and consistently that are good. Because as I said, building from scratch, maybe it's just a skill issue on my end. I'm sure there's better builders than me. Well, there are much better builders than me that can just build teams from scratch. But for me personally, this is how I come up with the vast majority of my teams. I take ideas that are already doing well and then put my own spin on them. And then once I've found that, or if I do on the off chance build a team very good that's from scratch, then that again becomes the template for many more teams. So I won't go through too many more of these variations. I think that makes perfect sense on what to do. But what I want to talk about more specifically now is a Mix Gon set that I have played around a little bit with on one of these teams. I think it's this one, the Scarf Rotom. Yes, it is. So Flygon here. This is like I don't know who created this set, but I hear BKC talking about it quite a bit. So maybe he was the first person to start playing with it. I'm not sure. But it's physically based Mix Gon. Now, physically based Mix Gon will typically be Earthquake, Outrage, Fire Blast with max attack and max speed and some in special attack. All right, the leftover form. The reason why this Flygon is good is because it allows you to, the number one reason is because it allows you to beat Clefable and the steals a lot better. Because with a Mix Gon that's typically your naive max special attack, max speed, is the Earthquakes don't hit hard. So something like a physically defensive Wish Tech Darashi, you have a very hard time breaking through, or even just, hitting a Metagross or a Tyranitar, it's only doing probably like 60-70% to. Whereas once you pump up the attack, you can deal big damage to them, and you now have a way with Earthquake and Outrage to get through specially defensive Clefable, which Mix Flygon has a very hard time getting through. Special offensive Mix Flygon has a very hard time getting through Clefable, because this Earthquake only hits for about 50, and a Straco Meteor only hits for about the same as well. So the only way you're getting through it is by critting it, and a lot of the time that doesn't even work either, because the Clefable just knocks off your Life Orb, and then you just don't do enough damage. So with the physical version, you run Earthquake, Outrage, Fire Blast, Roost. Roost, or the other one that BKC recommends is Toxic, which is really good for hitting your grounds, because this isn't getting through a Hippowdon very well, or like a Gliscor, for example. So Toxic is just really nice to have there. But what I've found is, and also the other recommendation is Dragon Claw. But both Dragon Claw and Outrage have their drawbacks, right? So the drawback of Dragon Claw is it just hits like a wet paper bag. It's just not powerful enough. The drawback of Outrage is obvious too, is that you don't want to be locking yourself into Outrage just to hit like a flying target, which is why Toxic is pretty good, but it doesn't do immediate damage. So it kind of sucks that you have to, let's just say there's a Zapdos at 40%, or a Gliscor or something like that you have to lock yourself into Outrage to finish it off. That's what sucks. You have to lock yourself into Outrage to finish off a levitating target most of the time, because Fire Blast just isn't going to cut it the majority of the time. So that sucks. Whereas if you do something like this, and the other thing too with Outrage on a Life Orb is not only is it the fact that you have to lock into it, but it also just doesn't hit hard enough. Like, it hits reasonably hard, but it just doesn't hit hard enough to the point where it's very easily exploitable. Like, locking into it, like if you have an Adamant Choice Band Flygon, locking into Outrage isn't as big of a deal because it hits so much harder. Like, for some context, the difference in power between an Outrage on a Naive or a Hasty plus Speed Nature Flygon, Outrage versus an Adamant CB, is 27%. It's a big difference. So because of that, it's much less exploitable. Like, you can have something that comes in on a CB Flygon's Outrage, and it can really chunk it for some big, massive damage. Like if you have something like a Heatran or a Metagross that come in. Whereas off the Life Orb plus Speed variant, it kind of just bounces off a little bit. So it's more exploitable. When you're locked into Outrage, it's much more exploitable. And you're also chipping yourself with Life Orb as well. So what I've found with a bit of testing is, and I haven't found a really good 6 for this to work on yet, but I know it has some potential, is putting Draco Meteor in that last spot. And this is really cool because it gives you a spammable dragon move, even though it isn't like super powerful or anything. Even with no special attack EV, the fact that you got Life Orb and you got Stab, it hits okay. Like, we'll run a calc and we'll see where it hits. Like, for example, right? We'll go and we'll put this in. Import. There we go. All right. I'm just going to show you here. Offence Mix Gon. So it's hitting the physically defensive Zapdos for basically the same damage. So slightly more actually, for 45.4 to 53.5, for 46.4 to 55. So actually hits the Zapdos slightly harder, but that's not the benefit. The benefit is that if you have the Zapdos coming in on you, you don't have, and it's at around about 50%, you don't have to lock yourself into Outrage to finish it off. You don't have to lock yourself into Outrage to finish off a physically like a defensive Latias, or like a Gliscor, for example. You don't have to lock yourself into an Outrage to finish it off. So even though, like I said, Draco Meteor isn't really super powerful or anything like that, it gives you a spammable dragon move that you don't have to lock into, which allows you to run Outrage. Because before, obviously the drawback with Dragon Claw was the lack of power, but then at least you could hit the levitators and stuff like that without having to lock in. Whereas now, because you're running Draco Meteor, it allows you to hit those Pokemon, which allows you to then run Outrage without as many drawbacks. Because a lot of the time, you'll be able to finish off the Pokemon you need to finish off, the levitating Pokemon, like I said, Gengar, Gyarados, Zapdos, defensive Latias, whatever, you'll be able to finish them off with the Draco. So that's a really cool thing, right? And also too, it can give the illusion of, especially if you KO'd a Pokemon, it can give you the illusion to bluff a special offensive Flygon. So then they bring in, for example, their Clefable, and now you can whack it really hard with an Earthquake or an Outrage. So that's basically just what I wanted to talk about in this video. That's what basically got me onto this set, was playing around with this French offense style of team, where the original was, I didn't get to see the calc, but I'm assuming it was a special based Flygon. Well, yeah. And then I thought, on this team, it just fit really nicely if I'd made it physical, and why not put Draco Meteor on it? So that was just my thought process. To go back to this kind of team, I just wanted to talk about it a little bit more, and why this kind of structure would kind of be good. Latias is pretty self-explanatory here. I mean, Latias just is so good on offense just because it gives so many resistances, like your fire, your water, grass, ground, fighting. Just gives a ridiculous amount of resistances. I've been kind of off Spec Slutty a little bit lately. I don't like timid Spec Sluttius at the moment. It hits hard, but just that 10% extra power from Modest makes all the difference. But it still is an incredible Pokemon, being able to outspeed threats. Like, again, the Mix Gon, Infernape, tying with Gengar. It's just got incredible speed to you. So Latias is, no matter what offense, Latias is always going to be good. Flygon, I think, is a bit more less common on. Oh, it's probably more common on these teams now that Breloom is heavily nerfed, because on these types of teams, typically in the past, Breloom fit really nicely on special based offense because it gave you something to soak Thunder Wave, which is really important. Whereas now you don't. And this is why I find myself building with Flygon so much nowadays, and I love it so much, is because it gives you a Thunder Wave switch in on offense, which, as much as I love special defensive Heatran on offense, it does take Thunder Waves quite well, you'd rather just not have a Thunder Wave. It's always going to be better when you're able to move 100% of the time rather than 75%, and and your speed isn't cut in a quarter. Special defensive Heatran also works really well on these special offense kind of teams, because if you, like I said, it gives you the switch into those electric types. Like, you're going to have a hard time with Zapdos and Rotom on these types of teams a lot of the time, and the special defense on Heatran really just shrugs off those Thunderbolts, because as much as you have the Latias, right, and Flygon, which are electric resists, they're not great at coming into Zapdos, because Flygon's obviously one-shotted by Hidden Power Ice. Latias can't take the Thunder Wave. It also doesn't like repeated HP Ices or a Toxic, although it's less of a concern. But yeah, HP Ice in general. And just the bulk of it, like Flygon has a hard time getting through Zapdos just because of the sheer bulk. Like, even an Adamant CB Flygon isn't doing, like, if you look here, like 68% max with Outrage, so it can't even KO it after rocks, right? So just Zapdos tends to be a little bit of a problem for these teams. Rotom to a lesser extent, but it can be a little bit annoying. So Heatran, just special defensive, just tends to fit really nicely there. And then your Suicune's fantastic on these types of teams because it gives you that second water resist. If you're just relying on Latias as your only water resist, you can get a little bit dicey into waters. Whereas Suicune, because of its great natural bulk, allows you to switch into the all water types really nicely. But also, second to that, is why I really like Suicune on these styles of teams, is it gives you a secondary check to the Dragon Dancers. So although it's not a hard counter for them by any means, it gives you more tools to play around them. Like Dragon Dance Gyarados, for example. If for whatever reason my Metagross is down, I have a way of checking it. Or, for example, I might not even want to bring my Metagross in, I just go straight to Suicune. Same with a Dragonite, right? I don't think Outrage KOs from max health. Let's see. I mean, I know Life Orb does, but the thing is, it has to lock into Outrage, which means then you can exploit it in other ways. Suicune. Oh no, +1 can kill it. Interesting. But it's not a bad check. You have a good chance to live if you don't have Rocks up. And then obviously DD Tar, while it isn't again, it allows you to KO a DD Tar from probably like 50% too. So if Metagross is ever down, you do have some tools. So yeah, Suicune fits really nicely on these teams. And then as I said, you need a Scarfer in there somewhere. So that's where I can see Emeralds put the Metagross. It's just fitted nicely. Heatran and Metagross are also pretty interchangeable for the Scarf slot. You can run a special defensive Metagross there and a Scarf Heatran, although I generally prefer to run a special defensive because of the electrics. Heatran does a lot better than the Metagross. Or you could run a Scarf Latias, which is probably my personal favourite. And then, as I said in the last slot previously, you're going to go with that Ghost type. Or at the very least, a Fighting Resist, because you can see here, if you don't have that Fighting Resist or Immune, you're just going to get, you're going to have nothing that can switch into like a Lucario or Lucario, however you want to say it, something like that. Or even, just being able to pivot around a Infernape. Although Gengar isn't a hard counter by any means to Infernape, the ability to come in on close combat just makes it so much easier to deal with, and you can force a lot of mind games with that. So yeah, that's basically what I just wanted to talk about in this video. French offense, what it looks like if there is a more templated style to it. This was just what I seen from a video. I'm like, hey, this is cool. And it's especially why I wanted to talk about it was because I tend to build a lot of teams like this. And to again go over just show you how many different variations of a team you can make from one idea. Because I see a lot of people talk about in the DPP chord is I've seen this quite a few times where people will be like, oh, I don't really want to play in best of 3 tournaments because it's putting too much strain on me with having to build good teams all the time, right? And I get it because it is hard, and I have a limited, especially as an adult now, you just don't have the time you used to when you're a 15-year-old playing this game. So this is what I've found to be the best way to just generate lots of teams very quickly. And the other, sorry to go on for a bit of a tangent here, is another reason I like building like this is because you get familiar with the style. So even though these teams might be a different 6, and I've switched around certain things, like on this one I took Metagross out and put Scissor in, is that they all kind of play very similar. So when you get good at one, you kind of switch to another one and it'll feel very similar to play, which is very important, because one of the mistakes I see new players make all the time is you look at their replays and every single game they're using just a completely, or between rounds in tournaments, they're just using completely different teams all the time, and they never get competent at one style. Whereas, even though these aren't the same teams, they're a similar style. So how you play one is going to be very similar to how you play the other. And you don't have to relearn it from scratch. Playing this type of team would be completely different to playing a stall 6. Whereas if you play stall consistently, you'll kind of get a feel for those teams and you'll get good at those type of teams. But then if you were that stall player and you never played hyper offense teams and you switch that, even though if you might be a good player, you might play with them quite poorly. So it's just good to get good at using one style of team first and then broadening and expanding out from there. It's like myself personally, I can play offense, bulky offense, and like balance very well, but I can't play like heavy offense, like your standard kind of Aerodactyl or Azalf lead hyper offense with setup sweepers. I can't play that well, and I can't play hard stall very well. So anyway, just some more context and to show you the cool little Mix Gon variation with Draco Media. So I hope you enjoy that one, and I'll see you around.